I heard about it 2 weeks before I met Gail. Gail contacted the record company of Dr. Gold, and she said, "Would you be interested to provide or create new music exclusively for?" She said a private label. She didn't give much information. She described herself as a private label, which meant to us that it would be exclusive music that would be created just for that organization. And then she gave some more information, and she said that she wanted special music that would be created just for the egg. And as we were looking into it, and I was very interested. After I learned about the egg from her website, I wrote to Dr. Gold and I said, I'll be very interested to work with Gail to create new music for her egg. And then I noticed, and then Gail sent me an email saying that she would be interested to talk about it. And then I noticed in her signature that she's in Westminster, Colorado. And I was 2 weeks before leaving on a 10-day concert tour in Colorado. And so I wrote to Gail. I said, I'll be in your neighborhood. I'll be passing by. And she got so excited. She said, you have to come. You have to experience the egg yourself. And that's led to our meeting. And for me, actually sitting in there, laying there in the chair and experiencing that fabulous listening. For me, it's a listening environment that is unlike any other. Well, I think it has to do with the proportions. I'm not sure, but something about the ratios of the distancing within that space and the shape of it. So to me, it seemed like a floating surround sound experience. So the sound envelopes you, and it's all around you, but it's unlike in a surround sound theater. The speakers, you sit in a theater, even in a home theater, and there are quite a distance between you and the various speakers. And in a surround sound, you have, let's say, 6 or 5 or 12 speakers, sources of sounds around you. And you can get that illusion that sound moves around the room if they program it right, moving the sound or elements of the sound among those various speakers. In the egg, oddly enough, it's really just a stereo. There's only 2 speakers to your left and your right, and there's a bass speaker under you. But the simple stereo sound that is just left and right is being projected from your left and your right into that space that you are in. And then the sound reflects from the different surfaces within the egg in a way that creates an illusion of a surround sound that is not far from you, but you are in it. The sound really envelopes you. It's a really unique sensation that the sound envelopes you and you are floating inside that sound. Plus, the bass is right under your seat, so I felt the bass frequencies vibrating through the seat, and I could feel it. So it's not just a listening experience. It's like a massage, I would say. It's a sonic massage that works on your body and your mind from all directions, and it's quite pleasurable. I find it to be a really a gorgeous experience, and I listened. She played me my own composition, which is the 6 Healing Sounds, and when I heard the first track, which is metal, and then wood, then water, and then wood. So there was those 3 tracks, and it was a 30 minutes experience. I felt tears in my throat. I never heard my own music in such a way. It was really gorgeous, and it felt like waves arising and arising. You know, the music was not just floating, but it was separate. The different elements in the music became like very clearly like wave of sound. And I noticed, you know, the different elements in the different musical tracks that I composed that worked differently in that space. And I learned a lot from it in order to compose custom-made music for that space. So I heard elements that I created that were spectacular, and other elements that were just okay, that sounded like in any other environment. But so that was a very interesting experience. Yes, yes, it's a beautiful listening experience. Um, it's surprising because I know in my mind, I know this is just stereo. Yet the experience was more than three-dimensional almost. It was three-dimensional. It was all enveloping. It was sensory because of the bass frequency that vibrate your bones and your flesh. So I would say it's an enhanced musical listening experience. And I kept saying to myself, but this is just stereo. How can just a stereo track so rich and so multidimensional? And I came to the conclusion, you know, the element of the bass vibrating under the chair, that's very easy for me to analyze. I knew the bass, the subwoofer it's called, is positioned right in the center, right under my desk. The bass frequencies vibrated the chair I was in. The vibration of the chair were vibrating my flesh and bones. And I was getting all this information, this vibrational information and massage through my body to my brain. And it was kind of a dance where your body danced to anything that you hear in the music. So imagine you have bass notes, low vibrations that play and vibrate the space, and your body, in a very nuanced way, is dancing, meaning your muscles and your flesh and your bones are moving to each note of the music in the low end of the music, in the bass range. So the bass moves your body. Whenever the bass moves, you feel the movement. So that was very, very clear to me what is going on. The analysis is very simple because it's direct contact between the bass amp, the bass speaker, and the chair you sit in. Okay, unlike when you are in a movie theater in a surround sound, the bass amp is in one of the corners, and it travels through the floor, and it vibrates your chair, and you feel the bass. You feel the bass, but there's still travel between the bass amp through the floor to your chair and through the chair to you. Here, there's no floor. The bass amp is right mounted under your chair. Okay, so that is clear to me. What is not quite clear to me, it's a bit of a mystery, is how the stereo left and right speakers, the vibrations from those speakers travel through the air in that space of the egg, and they reflect back to you from the various surfaces. It's not just one surface in the egg. It's not just a room with a ceiling and a floor. The egg is shaped in an egg, but within that capsule, there are various panels the whole ceiling and the floor and all the panels around you are made from multiple panels, almost like a roof that's made from tiles. It's many pieces of clay put together. Okay, the egg, the shape of the egg, from my observation, seems to have multiple panels that each one reflect the sound in a different way towards. And I'm guessing that the sacred geometry and the golden measurements that Gail used creates a most harmonious, reflective, multi-reflective surfaces within the egg. And so, although we are sending only 2 tracks, left and right, into that space, the amount of reflections from different areas around you throw the sound back at you in many different reflections, and something about the ratios and the distancing within that space creates the most harmonious set of reflections. It would be like, the best analogy would be like when I went in 2007, I went to record an album called Oud Prayers on the Road to Saint Jacques. And I went to the Camino de Compostela. I went through the Pyrenees Mountains from France to Spain. And on that pilgrimage road from the Middle Ages, every 2 miles there's another chapel. Every 2 miles that was built for the pilgrims to spend the night, to have a shelter and to pray. And I was looking for the best sound. Which of these many chapels have the best sound for the recording? And I spent time testing, taking my oud, my lute, and playing in each of those chapels on the French side of the Pyrenees. And out of all the different chapels, I chose 3 that sounded the best to my ear, sounded most harmonious, most beautiful. Now, why one chapel sound better than the other? It's all the combinations of the measurements and the materials and basically the architecture. The architecture in those 3 chapels was the most successful for creating the most sweet and harmonious, beautiful sound. So I think that here in the egg we have an issue, again, of architecture that is very successful, and it's not. I understand from Gail that she had that intention, of course, and that's why she didn't just come up with measurements. She didn't improvise. She didn't guess it. My understanding is she studied sacred geometry, and she came up with measurements that are come from sacred symbols, sacred geometry, and the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And I can tell you that I experience it with music that I compose, that I know in and out, and I heard on many different speakers and many different spaces, and my own music in that space sounded just terrific, and it brought me to tears. It was so beautiful. Yes, she played for me a short excerpt from another composer, which was not as rich and layered production as mine. It was just a piano and some instruments like a synthesizer, cello, things that didn't have the full real instruments resonance. But it was not as satisfactory to me, and I know it's because of the quality of the production, the value that was put into it. But I noticed something interesting in the panning. There was a shaker that went, a kind of sparse shaker sound with pauses in between, and the composer panned it left to right and right to left, so it moved in the space. And I noticed that was a beautiful experience because, again, in the egg, I learned that moving sound from right to left sound richer and more like a surround sound in a movie theater than just moving the sound right to left as we normally experience it in a stereo. So I notice again how the reflections make the illusion that the sound moved in front of you and behind you. While when you sit in front of a stereo system and you hear a shaker being panned from right to left, you experience something moving in the space. In the egg, although it's just, again, a stereo system, it's not a surround sound system, the sensation was that the sound of the shaker moved behind me and in front of me, which is part of that secret of that enveloping sound. Because the way she located the stereo speakers, the left and right, not in front of the chair in the egg, but rather all the way to the left and all the way to the right. So the left speaker is facing your left ear. Your right speaker is facing your right ear. So it's almost like you are inside headphones. It's like the setting of the headphones, but it's not on your ear. It's, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 feet away from your ear, pointing to your ear. That's where the speakers are, on the far left and the far right. And then the sound travels through the egg, behind you, above you, in front of you, below you, and does wonderful sound reflection that are sound waves that are traveling from every surface in the egg towards your ears. So the listening experience is much more complex. Again, I can think about the example of cathedrals. If you may walk into one cathedral and hear an organ play, and it would sound cold, or it would sound too boomy, or not as beautiful, and you may walk to another cathedral, and maybe the same organ player, and the sound would be just rich and perfectly balanced, and that has to do with architecture. Yeah. I mean, for me personally, I felt an emotional response that was deeper emotion than listening to the music in a regular listening experience. But that could be just me personally experiencing my own music and just witnessing an enhanced beauty that I never heard in that music that I'm so familiar, and that maybe that made me more emotional. It may be my own private case, but in the other aspect that you're asking about, I did notice deep relaxation, and I remember about 20 minutes into it, my arms, I was so relaxed that my arms melted off the armchair rest, and my arms just dangled to the side of my body. It just slipped off the armrests because I became so, my body became so relaxed that I had no muscle grips. It was completely loose. My whole muscle tissues were very, 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 very relaxed. Like when a baby falls asleep on you, and suddenly you feel they're so heavy because they let go of the grip of the muscles. When a baby, any human being, any animals too, when you hold a cat and the cat falls asleep on you, you feel the cat is heavier. Why? Because they let go of holding their muscle, contracting the muscles, which we do all the time when we are awake, and we're just holding our body. We are holding as if we don't, we're going to melt like ice cream, But it's part of just walking through this life, You have to hold yourself. And then when you let yourself, and the problem is, it's okay during, you walk, you operate a machine, you operate computers. Yeah, you should have your grip on your muscles. But the problem is that people, when they lay down, they forget to let go of their muscles. They don't even relax when they sleep. And music really helps for these people when they have trouble really letting go in order to have a good sleep or a good rest. In yoga, at the end of yoga, it takes a whole hour and a half in a yoga session to get to Shavasana, which is the corpse position on the floor, which is the whole point of the whole yoga, is to get to that last 10 minutes or 5 minutes when you lay down and you really surrender, you really let go. And that could be the deepest experience of the whole yoga session, but it takes a whole hour and a half to get people to stretch and create space and meditate for an hour and a half in order to finally let go of all their muscles and be open to something that they may receive in Shavasana, in that corpse position. And some people are in tears sometimes. Sometimes it can be something very deep that comes to you when you really, really relax all your muscles and you let go. So I experienced that in the egg. About 20 minutes into it, my hands just slipped off the armrest, and I felt slowly that my eyelid become heavier, and I felt that I'm getting so relaxed that I'm going to fall asleep, or I'm going to be, maybe not fall asleep, but I'm going to be in a place where I cannot analyze. I felt that, and because I was so intellectually curious, I was there also. I was not there 100% to experience the egg and relax and let go and surrender. I was there as a scientist, as an artist, testing that environment. I knew that I'm there for a reason. I was called there by Gail and by Dr. Gold, and I was told that there's an interest in me composing special music for that space. So I was on a job. I was exploring. I was collecting information. And I said to myself at that point, I can't let completely go. I have to stay alert and observe the impact of the sound in the space. And I said to myself, I have to be listening. I have to continue to listen. And I focused on the sound, and I collected data. I collected data of every little sound in my music that came up, every little note that I knew by heart. I knew exactly what's going on in the music, but I collected information about what the space is doing to that note that I'm so familiar with. What kind of frequencies are being added to it? How does it feel in the space? How it travels in the space? So I was keenly listening, and at that point that I was about to lose it, I consciously sacrificed that experience of being a patient in the egg, and reminded myself, no, I'm here to collect the data. I'm working, and I didn't let myself completely let go. So my body was completely relaxed, my muscles were completely relaxed, but my mind remained alert. And the experience was very pleasurable. I enjoyed it very, very much, even though I was in this analytical mode of listening and analyzing. I really enjoyed the listening experience. Yeah, to me, the big thing physically is the muscle relaxation. I think that it would be really good for people who have hard time letting go, that have muscle contractions, all kinds of back pain, and uh, people suffer from tendinitis, carpal tunnel. Um, there's a lot of those conditions that are also stress-related. So anything that somebody experienced that relates to muscle tension or tendon tension or inflammation, I think, or back pain, hamstring tightness, I think it would be really beneficial because they would experience um, deep relaxation that would have beneficial effect on all those things. I imagine that, like any experience like that, your pulse slows down, your heartbeat slows down. So people with high blood pressure and lastly, I was thinking about children that have HDD, have this hyper energy issues. I think it could be really beneficial for them to be in that environment for treatment, because there are no drugs, no chemicals, no side effects, just sound and sacred geometry, and it could be really beneficial. One thing that I see that would work wonderfully in this space is rising waves in a sequence, meaning when you have in a musical composition, you have different elements, different pulsation of different instruments. This space of the egg really works well when things rising and falling, and another thing rises and fall, and so there's layers of sound that one at a time come to the foreground and fade away to the background. And because each vibration, each pulsation takes on the reflection of the space and does wonderful things to it, you see. So if you put all your pulsation, or if you put all your elements together, for example, if you have a flute and a bass and a French horn all played together, something very harmonious and beautiful like you have in a Mozart symphony, it would do one thing in the egg. It would be beautiful. But if you would space it, and you have the flute comes in and pulsating, and 3 seconds later the French horn comes in and pulsating, and then 3 seconds later the other instruments comes in and pulsating. The way it would work in the egg is that each element, because it starts ringing in the space, would have its own set of reflections that would be very, very beautiful and pleasurable in that space. So that's one thing that I learned, is to space the instrumentation in the layering. And the other thing is panning, the way, moving elements from right to left very slowly has a wonderful impact in that space, because it moves all around you, not just in front of you. And so panning and waves, swells, occasional swells or sequenced, patterned swells of waves of sound. Those are the two things that are working extraordinarily well in that space. And it's pretty obvious for me what would not be great in that space is, too busy of rhythmic percussion. Everything you throw into that space envelopes you and get multiplied by the reflections. So that could be overwhelming, like if you would have like an African drum circle. So that's kind of an obvious no-no, but in any case, we know that we want to have music that is relatively slow, that has a relatively slow pulsation, because we want to create relaxation. And so all the principles that I use in creating music for healing, that include relaxation and kind of inner physical massage, all the other elements that I usually use would work well in the Harmonic Egg. But the two unique devices that I mentioned earlier are unique to that space. Yes, I would go and experience the egg just for the pleasure of listening. For me, the relaxation. I would say there's other modes of relaxation that one could choose from, but nobody could experience that listening experience, the beauty and harmony and the sensation of that listening environment. And so I would say, if somebody get deep relaxations from doing a session with Reiki or with acupuncture, that's wonderful. If somebody cannot somebody cannot stand being punctured by needles, and somebody have no other really good modality to use to achieve deep relaxation, the egg would be a great, non-invasive, comfortable experience. But the listening experience in the egg is unlike any other experience, and so I would go to the egg for a listening experience. And when I got out of the room in Colorado at the Life Center of Gail, I went to the main room, the waiting room, and I sit there. And from the second room come out a cellist, a very professional cellist who played for the Dalai Lama, and he's one of my colleagues. I've done a concert with him in LA, and I was surprised to see him there. I said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "Well, I left LA. I don't live in LA. I moved to Colorado, so here I am." And then I said to Gail, "Does anybody get addicted to this experience?" And the cellist jumped and said, "I am. I think that if you beyond the relaxation, all the therapeutic benefits, for musicians and for music lovers and anybody who appreciate sonic experiences and beauty, it's a really beautiful experience. I wish everybody would have an egg in their house, and they would just go there to listen to music."